I'm fantasy and romance author Leslye Penelope, and this is Imagining Success, an interview series where I talk to authors who have achieved career milestones others only dream about, and ask them how they got there and where they go from here. In this episode, I get to speak to the legendary romance author, Beverly Jenkins. Ms. Bev is best known for her historical romance novels that shine a light onto African American history. But she also writes contemporary romance, romantic suspense, and young adult titles. Through her work, countless women of color have been able to see themselves on the page, falling in love in time periods and scenarios that are deftly researched and have created an army of loyal readers. She's the recipient of the 2017 Romance Writers of America Nora Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award, as well as the 2016 Romantic Times Reviewer's Choice Award for Historical Romance. I was beyond thrilled to be able to talk with Ms. Beverly Jenkins. Here's our conversation. Welcome, Beverly Jenkins, to my imaginary friends. I'm so happy that you are here.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I see you got on my shirt.
I do. I'm wearing the Slayer of Words shirt. Get these from the Smart Bitches website. And yeah, I was there for that speech when this was coined.
Oh, okay.
That was a great moment.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun. I got my Black Authors Matter hat on.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Got that from, what is her name? Gwen, down in Houston.
Oh, nice.
Who does the Black Book Fair down there. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to shut up, let you get started.
So I just wanted to start out, before publishing, why did you start writing in the first place?
I began writing, elementary school. Always had a love for words. Mm-hmm. I was the editor of my elementary school newspaper, The Comet, at Jones Elementary on the east side of Detroit. But it was not something that I had planned to do as a life goal. Mm-hmm. All I wanted to do was work in a library, probably because there were books there. But I scribbled and scribbled and scribbled through junior high and high school. And I think she might have been my 11th grade teacher, a woman named Linda Berkowitz, I still remember her name, had us do a short story one day in class. And when she turned them back to us a couple days later, she made me stay after class for a minute. And she said she wanted to enter the little story that I had written in a citywide contest. And I'm like, so, being 15 or whatever, and not having a whole lot of confidence in much of anything, except ruling my six brothers and sisters. I respectfully declined. She was very, very disappointed. Oh. But at that point was when I knew I could write. Mm-hmm. But it was still not a life goal. And maybe it was because, when you grow up, the way I did in the 60s, and life is more than enough for you to handle on a regular basis. You don't see writers. And a lot of times you can't be what you don't see. Mm-hmm. I did a little event down in, where was I? In Mississippi? This was 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. But anyway, it was a library lunch. And what they did was they had, lunch, which was good for the people who attended. And then they had people like me on the stage, talking and answering questions. And afterwards, I'm signing books outside of the venue, and they had invited a bunch of high school kids. And these were all, young Black kids, high school. And one of the young women was in tears. And, me being as sensitive as I am, I'm like, baby, why are you crying? You're going to have me crying. I don't even know why you're crying, right? And she said she had always wanted to be a writer, but she had never seen one before. Mm. And it touched her so much that she was in tears, and I just, I'm a
Yeah.
hugger. So, I just pulled her in and said, baby girl, you can be whatever you want to be in this world.
Yeah.
So sometimes our kids, meaning, kids of color,
Hmm.
don't get to see sometimes what they aspire or what their dream is.
Yeah.
So me not having, like I said, being 15 and no confidence outside of my own little bubble. When she asked me to, I was like, nah, I'm cool.
That's can be really powerful. I did my first school events recently, I think in November.
Okay.
And I spoke at a middle school and a high school, and I'm doing some more. And it is amazing to see kids, and these are kids, I'm in Maryland, so they're in Southeast DC, which is, they have this program that kind of brings in authors and Black authors to speak to them. And just seeing them meet an author, and, we're still celebrities to them. And it's,
Right. Yeah.
I feel a little jaded, but it is really powerful to connect with someone who loves reading and who never imagined that they could be a writer also.
Yeah. Yeah. I at the beginning of my career, I did a ton of school stuff. And one of the things I always ask when we do, after I got through doing whatever it was we did, I asked the kids, what are your dreams? And nobody had ever, even the teachers were surprised. They were like, we never thought, because, now schools are different than they were when we were growing up, when I was growing up. And the things that these kids said, and some of them had no, and also one of the things I told them was like, you don't laugh at somebody else's dream. So, our kids dream, but society in a lot of places doesn't allow them to think that could be a reality. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like, well, was writing part of your identity, even though you didn't necessarily have the confidence? Or do you think that came later?
The writing was part of my identity, but it was my private identity.
Okay.
I was a storyteller to my sisters. There were three of us in a bedroom. And at night, I would tell them stories. And looking back, it was fan fiction because, it was set in this big old house and there were Motown people in there and Star Trek people and, the Man from Uncle people and all of these people interacted, and there were love stories and all of this. And it got to the point where, we would hurry up and do our chores. So we would go to bed early, which, freaked my mother out. So they could hear the next episode, so, so all of that and the fact that, I love to read put me where I am now. Like I said, my
Mhm.
dream was working in a library and I had achieved that. And, but sometimes life hands you stuff and says, here, put this hat on. See how you like this.
Mhm.
Because I hadn't planned on being published at all. So here we are.
Yeah. So what was the leap between, writing privately and then seeking to become published, to have it more public?
It was a challenge from a woman that I worked with. I was working at the library at Park Davis Pharmaceuticals, which is probably maybe one of the real first of the big firms. They started in Detroit back in the, I don't know, who knows how old they are. But anyway, they, I was at the reference desk and she wrote romance. my friend Laverne Cohen, we're still friends today, 30 years later. And she had just gotten published with a sweet publisher, a little
Mhm.
small press, not too far from where we were, and where Park Davis was in Ann Arbor, Michigan at that time. And we were celebrating her. And I told her about this little manuscript I was working on, just as an aside, not. And so she said, well, you bring it in, so let me read it. And so I brought it in, and it was something that I had been working on just for me after
Mhm.
work. Back when I was God, this was going to be 76. And I was working at the Michigan State University Library. My husband and I had been hooked up for about 5 years. And he played tennis in high school. This is a long story. He played tennis in high school. And he would come home from work and go play tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at the university library at that time. And I would come home and bring whatever I had snuck out of cataloging, and I would write on this story that eventually would become Night Song. Because I'd always loved love stories, even when nothing in the larger media represented us, people of color. So I would scribble on this and, la, la, la. So anyway, this is the manuscript that I gave to Laverne 10 years later. And she came back the next day. She said, "You really need to get this published." And I'm like, where? Because this is like 87, maybe 89 or so. And, and the market was closed to us for mass market.
Right.
Except for, occasional people. And I tell folks that she harassed me every day. Bless her heart. And sometimes, I'm a firm believer that the universe or God or whoever the creator is puts stuff in your life when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a subscription, I think, to Romantic Times back then. And the only person that I had seen of color was Vivian Stevens.
Right.
Okay. So some kind of way, and to this day, I have no idea how I got Vivian's contact information. But I sent her my little raggedy manuscript just to shut Laverne up. I knew that this was after Vivian had left Harlequin, and she had a small literary agency. And so, like I said, I had no idea how I got in touch with her. But anyway, I sent it to her. And less than, I want to say 4 or 5 days later, she called me at the desk because I had given her the work number and the house number. And she said she wanted to represent me. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. And out of that came Night Song, which was the first book. Avon bought it in 93. It was published in 94. So this will be its 30th year.
Wow, yeah.
And my 30th year as a published author. So
wow.
It's been a blessing.
Yeah. So when you get the call from Vivian Stevens,
Yeah.
As it was coming, like as you were on submission or when it was first being published, do you remember what you thought success would be? Like, what were your hopes for it?
I didn't care.
Okay.
Because like I said, I had no plans. Being published was not a dream of mine.
Mm-hmm.
All I ever wanted to do was work in the library. And that's what I was doing. So the hundreds, that's my number of rejections that I got, didn't mean anything to me because I was getting up every morning and living a dream. I was going to work in the library every morning, So now, granted, had I been looking to be published, I'm sure all of the rejection letters would have broken my heart.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But like I said, I don't care. Like I said, I was living my dream. I didn't care anything about that. But then on June 3rd, 1993, and I told a story at one of the events about this fight my husband and I were having that day. And in the middle of the fight, the phone rang. And it was Ellen Edwards, who was executive editor at Avon. And she wanted to buy my book. So it's like, okay, time out on the fight. And that's where the journey began, and a year later. And that was his birthday, too, June 3rd.
Oh.
So, yeah, my biggest supporter. Miss him dearly. But it took off from there. And they kept sending me contracts, and I kept sending them books. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like I said, 30 years later, here we are, you and I.
So 30 years later, why are you still writing? Has it
It,
become, yeah.
it's my dream now. I mean, it. I didn't realize how many stories I had inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed, you enjoy seeing your stuff in the store, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But it was the reaction of the readers that really touched my heart. Um, because nobody had written historicals before. I mean, we'd had contemporary
Yeah.
with Rosalind Wells and Sandra Kitt and Brendan, them when they were writing for, I can't think of it'll come to me, before Arabesque.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that not only was I getting published, but people were writing me letters about how
Yeah.
much they loved the stories and what it did for their self-esteem and all of that. And I was like, okay, well, here's the next book, So, and back then it was one book a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you had time to devote as much love and affection and work as it needed for them to be, stand out in the market, whether, the white media embraced it or not.
Mm-hmm.
The women of color of all stripes, not
Right.
just Black women, began to see themselves in places that they'd never seen themselves before on the page, and in situations that they'd never seen themselves before on a page. So it was a win-win for me and a win-win for them,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's like that. What is that Oscar Wilde quote? If I don't write, I go mad. So it got to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I've had a great ride. I've had a
Yeah.
great ride.
And I mean, it's not too much to say that you are a beloved author among your readers and other authors, especially Black authors, Black romance authors,
Mhm.
And so I know that the feedback, you have a really close relationship with your readers.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that, um, kind of come back in terms of what their expectations? Does that weigh on you at all when you're writing, if you're thinking about them?
No, the expectations come within me.
Mm,
Um, I tried very, very hard not to write the same book twice. I tried very, very hard to represent the history in a way that we can all be proud.
hmm
I I like to show whose shoulders we stand on because none of us would have gotten here without
Right.
those folks that came before. It's like Dorothy Sterling was in her book. We are black. We are your sisters, Black women of the 19th century. And she said Black women had three gifts in the 19th century, which is why we were basically successful back then. We worked, whether we were enslaved or free. We had a commitment to community and social activism. And number three, we pushed the envelope on gender and race. And if you think about that, we're all doing that still,
Yeah.
and all of my heroines, without me even thinking about it, have come to me with one, two, or three of those gifts. So it's my respect for the Black women. It's my respect for the community. It's my respect for my mama, who was Black before it was fashionable, who raised me with Black history in the home. Um, so it's something that I didn't know I had to do, but it became that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is the purpose? I mean, all three of those things are evident in your work, definitely. And I see that. And it
Right.
really resonates with me as well. I mean, does this work feel purpose driven?
Yeah. This is my ministry.
Yeah.
This is, the gospel that I try and spread.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when to know that, because I'm on my fourth generation of women now, I think, from the teen books through, their mamas, through their
Right.
mamas, through the old hands like me, right? So the idea that our history is now resonating with more women than we can probably count
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing for our history, and it's a good thing for the race. Because once you learn something, they can't take that from you.
Right.
Um, I always give the example of one of my ladies, her grandson had to do a Black History report. And, in schools, there ain't but 5 Black people in Black history. And I don't remember whether he did his report on Bass Reeves or the Cowboys or the Whalers in New England. But anyway, the teacher was blown away by his report. And she asked him, "Where did you get this information?" And he said, "My grandmama's Miss Bev books." That brings
I
tears to my
didn't
eyes.
expect that. It should be a source, a primary source for
Yeah,
that
yeah,
paper.
yeah. And I have one woman who was doing her PhD in history, American history. And she's telling the professor, I don't know what they were discussing, but she was telling the professor about the Great Exodus of 1879, which is, connected to Night Song and the Blessing series and all of that. And he told her she was making that up. He told her,
What?
well, you must be confusing that with the Great Migration of 1900. And she's like, no. This was the very first movement of Black people out of the South after the gutting and Reconstruction. He told her. So she told me, she said, luckily, Miss Bev, you have sites in the backs of your books.
Right? Yes.
And she said, so I sort of slapped him with those. And I said, well, how did he react to having to eat crow with his foot in his mouth? She said, I got to be in the class.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. She said, probably because she said, I should have gotten that A.
yeah.
But so it's a revolutionary kind of thing also, in
Mm-hmm.
that, not only are my readers learning, but the people that they come in contact with are learning about,
Mm-hmm.
our history and how deep and strong our roots are here in this
Right.
country. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that.
In terms of success in the publishing industry,
Yeah.
wow, with the things that are kind of stacked up and the things that I'm sure that you've seen and been through the 3 decades in the publishing industry, that has to affect your kind of goals or where you think the books can go, or does it? Does that
Well, it
get in your
does
mind?
in the sense that I have never made New York Times.
Right.
Okay. But through these books, I feel like I'm connected to every Black woman in this country. And that's a different kind of success.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a different kind of success, which is probably more valuable in the long run for
Mhm.
your spirit than it is for seeing your name on a list. Yeah, I'd love to make a list, but it's okay. I'm making lists
Mhm.
everywhere all the time. There are
Right.
women, that's one of the great things about Twitter that has now become such a hellhole. Um, there are women discovering my books every day. And it's just amazing to me. On one hand, I'm like, where you been? you know, how long I've been out here? And then on the other hand, you congratulate them for being new members of the family,
Mhm.
especially those women who never read historicals before, and the sense of self-worth that the books can sometimes supply.
Mhm.
So success success can be measured in myriad ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really important and really powerful because, I thinking about my own ideas of success in this industry and how they're changing and what my goals are, okay, yes, hitting a list seems to be the thing that's out there.
Okay.
Especially if you're traditionally published, hitting the New York Times list
Right.
specifically, because there's other lists. I know you say today,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah. Many
yeah,
times. Yeah.
right. New York Times has this, but New York Times is not a pure list. It's not a sales list. It's curated.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into it that it's like,
Yeah.
should that even be a goal?
Yeah. Well,
And yeah.
and even though I haven't made the list, I've been interviewed by them. I had my own little, whatever it's called, whatever that article is called, behind the books or whatever. Carol Bell did a did a great article on me recently. So the name is known. The name Beverly Jenkins is known, and like I said, sometimes success can be measured in different ways. So, but yeah, I mean, we are held to a different kind of success, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can have the big time success with the list, or you can have success with a little boy who writes an article or writes a Black History report,
Right.
and references his grandmama's Miss Bell books. That's a
Right.
different kind of, and that's a soul stirring and soul lasting kind of
Mhm.
success.
Yeah. So now it seems like you are one of the people that writers coming up can look to and see and like, oh, she can do that. I can do that. I can write historical. I can, break these barriers. You're definitely a trailblazer in that way. And, especially like I'd never thought I was going to write historical. I was like, I'm not doing all that research. That's too hard.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, but you can, there's so many, especially reading some of your books showing different parts of history that I didn't know about, that I was inspired to go learn more about. It's like, well, there's things that we haven't seen that people need to know about. And that was very inspiring in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a as a trailblazer or as just a person who is now a model,
Mm-hmm.
is writing hard? Do you ever face
Still,
imposter syndrome?
is nope. I don't. I was never raised to even know what imposter syndrome is. You know, from my elementary school teachers to my mama and my aunt. I had 9 aunts. I got 21 first cousins. Um, and the ladies at church. Nobody ever told me to be not dream,
Mhm.
and nobody ever told me that you're not worthy of your dreams. So I look at all these people talking about imposter syndrome, and I'm like, well, what the hell is that? You know, but I understand people, we were all raised differently. There's, no right way to be raised. There are wrong ways to be raised. But it never occurred to me to think I was not worthy to have people buy my books. Um, so the answer is no. I've never suffered from, I got too big of an ego for that, I think. It's like, somebody once said, writers must have huge egos. in order to think that people are going to buy their books.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that's true. So for me, how can you have the ego and not think you're worthy of this gift that you've been given? Because
Right.
writing is a gift.
Yes.
Um, that would be like, I don't know, John Batiste saying, well, I don't want a Grammy because, I don't think I'm a very good piano player. It's like, what? You know,
Yeah.
so,
It's a
but
huge contradiction. Yeah.
yeah, it is. So, like I said, I understand, you know, that some people don't have that confidence. Um, but my elementary school teachers put me on the stage in the fourth grade. I never met a microphone I didn't like since then. So getting up and speaking and quote unquote teaching and writing are all part of that. It's like, get up and do your thing, girl. Show these people, who you are and who you're representing and all that. And I'll be 73 in 2 weeks. And I think I'm still doing good. I don't know. I don't.
I think your readers agree with you.
Yeah. What you see is what you get,
Right.
so yeah.
Do you think about retiring from writing?
And, yeah, I do. I do. But then I like, okay, I got one more story to write,
They keep coming.
yeah, they keep coming. They don't care how old I am. I got a host of people. I call it in my brain, I call it my green room. And, they're all up in there tapping their foot and tapping their watches going, well, when is it my turn, girl?
Yeah.
I think when when it's time for me to leave this world, I tell people I'm gonna be banging on the inside of the casket, going, "Wait, I got another story to write. Wait a minute, I'm not ready yet." But I am seriously thinking about no longer touring, though,
Mm.
because you get to a certain age where it's hard to walk through airports and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was in New York recently, and LaGuardia almost killed me.
Oh, it's the
It's like,
worst.
this is the improved LaGuardia. Can we have the old one back, please? I almost died, but it gave me a little chuckle because it wasn't just me. Young people were struggling too, trying to get to the luggage thing. So, but yeah, I may stop. This may be my last year of doing the road so hard because I've been a road warrior for
Mm-hmm.
so long, mostly because you don't get the support. Especially during the first parts of my career, I didn't get the support that
Right.
you would expect
Right.
from those people who were sending you contracts. So you
Yeah.
had to go out there and sell your pizza on your own. Um,
There's a long tradition of that. I went indie initially because of researching Oscar Micheaux, the filmmaker,
okay,
early Black filmmaker who literally took his films in his car or whatever in
right,
1920s, from
yeah,
theater to theater. And
yeah,
then I had a professor at Howard, Haile Grima, who also took his films personally to theaters all across the country. So
yeah, yeah,
we know we have to sell our own work.
yeah. We got to make it do what it do. Otherwise, you're just sitting at home, you know, crying or
Being mad, right?
yeah. When you know, take the bull by the horn and get on a mule and go. So yeah.
So, what advice would you have to younger authors, early career authors or aspiring authors, about goal setting and ideas of success, like what their expectations should be in the industry?
I think the only thing you can control is what you write. You know, so if your goal is to write a lot, I think I got 60 books, which was like, what? Yeah, Iris Bolin asked me one day last week, we were talking on the phone. She said, "How many books do you have?" And I was like, "Girl, I don't know, because I don't keep up with
Right.
that kind of stuff. Some people count every book. I don't know." So
Mhm.
she called me back a couple days later. She said, "You got 60 books." She said, "So when
She got
somebody
it.
asks you, say
Now you
60
know.
books." I said, "Thank you, Iris." But, you know, I think you have to assess what you want out of your career. I mean, and I think we all measure success differently.
Mhm.
I mean, don't fall into the hype of thinking that, just because you make the New York Times list, that you're successful. Yeah, you're successful in that sense, but can you write another book?
Right.
And can you write another book after that? Can you write books for 30 years? Um, and make enough pennies to at least be comfortable?
Mhm.
Because that's the goal. Can my writing, along with Social Security, pay a light bill? I mean, it's also a subjective kind of thing.
Mhm.
But my base advice is to learn as much as you can about this business. You know, don't write a book and then say, "Well, what am I supposed to do next?" You should know.
Mhm.
You should know where to look. You might not know where to look, but there's always people out here who are going to help you. And then there are people out here who are going to steal your dreams. And
Mhm.
you need to know the difference. Um, Anybody that's asking you for money to represent them, that's a big ass red flag,
Mhm.
because money is supposed to flow to the author, not to the agent,
Right.
at least not personally.
Yeah.
Um, I also tell them, finish the book. A lot of people's, and I was included in that, just want to talk about, well, I'm writing a book. When are you going to finish it? As my sister and them used to say, well, how is the book doing? Because I have 4 sisters, and they give me no break.
Right.
And that's good, but, learn as much about the business as you can. Finish the book. You are not in competition with other writers. The only person you're competing with is yourself.
Mhm.
Um, what did I say the other day? Um, that there should be a class in how not to be a dumbass author.
I think a lot of authors need that class from
You
things
know,
we're seeing on social.
and that was what it was. I think the first one was, um, I don't remember what the first one. One was, don't create sock puppets to
Mm,
to to to, to to,
the
to
fake
dog out
reviews.
other authors.
Yeah.
Don't be a legend in your own mind. Um, don't solicit little girls to pose naked with your book.
Whew.
It's been a trip, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And we still in January.
I
Uh,
know, right? That was all this year, this month.
yeah.
Whew.
And oh, I know that the last one, I can't remember what the first one was, but the last one was, don't make Queen Nora
Mm,
angry.
mm.
You do
Somebody
that.
does that every year, seems like.
Yeah. You do that at your own peril. But but yeah, learn as much as you can about the business of writing, because that hopefully will save you some heartache. Um, I send people to Jane Friedman's
Mm,
website
yeah.
because she's so upfront about, how this business works. She's willing to help, and she knows what she's talking about because, she was a publisher and all of that, and editor and all that for years and years. So, and it's up to you to do the homework. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Mhm.
So you go to Jane Friedman and you look around and find, and you talk to other successful writers,
Yeah.
so, or maybe not successful, but somebody who knows their way around, who's been at this, and who's willing to help you. So, because most of the time, at least for romance, we try and get along. We try and be helpful. I think that was one of the biggest things about RWA was craft. We were
Yeah.
the best teachers of craft. The rest of it was crap. That's why they had to burn that place down. I was like, really?
Yeah.
But they are still out here trying to, restructure it and revive it and all that. And, God bless them. But surround yourself with people who are like-minded and people who are supportive. So, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's all important because we do this alone, and having people that can keep you from being an idiot that you can like check with before you do something, before you make that post,
Yeah,
just check in.
yeah.
Sometimes
Call your girls. Your girls need to tell you to close the laptop,
right?
go
Go
outside, touch
outside.
some grass.
One more question.
Uh-huh.
If someone calls you a successful author, how does
Mhm.
that make you feel?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's part of that. How do you measure success? If somebody calls me and says, um, "I read your books to my mom in hospice, and it helped her transition," or I have another woman on Twitter who said every time, and she's on the spectrum, and she said every time she loses it, she said what brings her back are my books. So, like I said, it depends on how you define
Hmm.
success. How do you find success in a world that is so crazy right now? You find it for me in little ways, in those small moments, um, those moments where people find grace in what you write. Um, the a sister who earlier in my career who told me, "Miss Bev, your books are wonderful." She said, I no longer sing "Nobody Knows the Trouble." She said, when I get to the end of your books, I found success in when Indigo was published and all the dark skinned women who were in tears because they had never been represented in that way before in their lives. So you can measure success by, how many Cadillacs you own, or, how many, uh, I can measure mine by how many Dooney and Burke bags I got. But, how many, you measure success in a way that fills your heart, I think. And we're all different. But, some people going to count how many Cadillacs they got.
Right.
Some people going to measure success by being, an asshole to their fans, because we've seen that.
Hmm.
You are never so successful that you cannot be kind to people who are paying your mortgage.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I love that because it's about authenticity, and that's another thing that I have been thinking and talking a lot about. It seems like your concern is the authenticity that you're putting into your books,
Mm-hmm.
and that touches people. Like we all feel it, those of us who read the books,
Yeah.
and there's that kind of feedback loop there. So if you were maybe if you had other goals, if you were chasing money, perhaps that more money would be there, but that authenticity and that connection would probably be lost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the older you get, stuff changes in how you look at things, how you look at life, how you interact with people. I mean, you got to basically start out as being a kind person anyway, to begin with. because some people just go the opposite and be all crotchety and all of that when they get old. But, you know, my philosophy is that it's better to be a blessing than to be a bitch, you know, and people can sense that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't ever want to be remembered for being unkind. The world is unkind enough without you adding to it. So, you know, be the drink of water on the desert, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you. This
Yo.
has absolutely helped me, and this is really why I'm doing it, but I think it's going to help lots of other people too.
My shingle is always, you know, like Lucy, you know, 5 cents, you know, I'm always here.
Thank you so much for being here and talking to me, and I've had a wonderful time and just an honor to speak to you, and I really appreciate it. Speaking with authors who I consider successful about their definitions of success is slowly helping me to reevaluate my own relationship with success. I absolutely love the confidence of someone who doesn't even understand imposter syndrome. One of my biggest takeaways from talking to Ms. Bev is what she said about no one told me not to dream or not to be worthy of my dreams. Imposter syndrome, which is that feeling that you're not really supposed to be here and your achievements are sort of you pulling one over on everyone else, it's a state of mind that so many of us internalize. But it's really important to remember that it's optional. If we all just said to ourselves, I deserve to be here. I am worthy. I am a real author who deserves to live their dreams. What could that mindset shift do? If you're interested in learning more about Beverly Jenkins or reading her work, which I highly recommend, I have links in the show notes. You can also sign up for the Footnotes newsletter, which includes all of the show notes for every episode, as well as weekly inspiration, strategies, and ideas to help you grow as a writer and as a creative. And that is at myimaginaryfriends.net/footnotes. When you sign up, you can choose to become an imaginary best friend for a few dollars a month and get access to premium posts, quarterly workshops, as well as discounts on my courses and coaching. Next up in our interview series, I'm going to speak with multiple award-winning author P. Jelly Clark. If you don't want to miss that, make sure you're subscribed. And until the next time, keep imagining.